Hi, I'm Mr. Simons, and this is part two of the 2019 stats you need to know for the New South Wales Economics HSC. We did the other video, so there were 5 stats there, and this video will have another 5. That gives us 10. So if you haven't seen the first part, you can click on the link above and then you can go and watch that video. Anyway, let's get started. Not your best work, was it? So stat number 6 is plus 5.9 billion. So a positive value of $5.9 billion. And this is the value of Australia's BOGS surplus, the balance of goods and services for August 2019. Now, so important. First thing is it's positive. Second thing is you can see there that it's an increase of 3.7 billion in the year to August 2019. So the BOGS surplus has increased substantially. And that when we're talking about the BOGS surplus, there's a number of different ways we could refer to it. We can call it the merchandise trade balance or the trade balance. We could call it net exports. It all means the same thing. And what it means is that Australia's sales of exports are outstripping the purchases of imports to a large extent. Part of it, Australia's exports are in demand because they're fuel for global growth. But the other thing to think about is that Australia's currency is pretty low. And we're going to have a look at that as a statistic coming up. And that is increasing the competitiveness of Australia's exports, which means that more are being sold. So this is a very important point because it will lead to our next statistic in terms of external stability. So stat number 7 is a positive value of 1.2%. Now, I've never seen this before in my life. This is the first time in my life. Very exciting development. And this is the value of Australia's current account, a positive value of 1.2% of GDP. Remember, that's a percentage value of GDP. And that's for the June quarter in 2019. And that is the first current account surplus in a very, very, very long period of time. And it is because of that BOGS value, because Australia's net primary income value is historically in deficit, still in deficit. So the thing that is lifting the current account deficit to a surplus is that BOGS surplus. You can see in this slide, we've got Australia's current account balance, and it's in the dollar value, it's not percentage of GDP. You can see there that that orangey line represents 0, and that we can see that even going back to 2000, that it's been in deficit. It's been below 0. Obviously, between different amounts, we sort of talk about between 2 and 6% of GDP, the size of that deficit. And here, in late 2019, we're sitting in that surplus value. Very useful to talk about, particularly because it represents such a shift from what we've seen previously. Stat number 8 represents or refers to fiscal policy, so plus 0.4% of GDP. This is the projected budget surplus for 2019-20. So this is the projected surplus that was announced at the federal budget earlier in 2019, and this is what the government is shooting for, to move from a deficit to an ever so small surplus. When you are talking about this, you could definitely discuss about whether this small surplus is a useful goal given the slowdown in the Australian economy, and also given that monetary policy is hella expansionary. Why is fiscal policy mildly contractionary? Shouldn't they be working in the same direction? And also you can go through those budget figures and see that the government's plan is to increase the surplus in coming years. Stat number 9 is 67 US cents. 1 Australian dollar as of late October 2019 buys 67 US cents. This is a fall of nearly 6 US cents since a year ago, October 2018. So the Australian dollar has depreciated relatively substantially. And that part of it is that Australia's interest rates are falling. It's less exciting to buy Australian dollars and move them to Australia to make a higher return. And that as a consequence, we've got a situation where exports are more competitive, but it's bad news if you want to invest overseas or travel overseas. All of that becomes much more expensive. So 67 cents, not great timing if you wanted to go on a holiday to America, for example. Okay, but a really strong point in talking about, okay, low Australian dollar, more competitive exports, hence, look at that, Boggs, surplus. Okay, number 10, and you knew this was coming, which is 0.75%. This is the level of the cash rate, the RBA's official interest rate as of October 2019. Very important to know that interest rate cuts, official cash rate cuts, took place in June, July and October of 2019 to bring it down to this level, that it is lower, the cash rate is lower than it ever was during the financial crisis. So the RBA is very concerned about the state of domestic growth and really wants to get people spending, borrowing money, investing, all of those injections into the economy and to try and stimulate aggregate demand. If you are discussing this statistic or using this statistic, you could definitely talk about the fact or the question marks about, is monetary policy effective at the moment? Is it doing what is intended to do if interest rates are so low but growth is still weak? And can monetary policy be super successful if fiscal policy is not working in the same direction? So those are the kinds of things you could use this stat for. Okay, so that's both parts. We got part 1 and now we finished up with part 2. Hope this was very useful in giving you some stats, some context, some detail, some evidence to use in your responses. Questions, clarifications, just leave them in the comments. And as always, thank you very much for watching.